Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on Jade War by Fonda Lee. Now I'm going to go based off the assumption that if you're watching this, you already read Jade City, the first book in the Greenbone saga, and so spoilers for that if you haven't read it yet, but I'm sure if you're here, you've already read the first book. So let's just get straight into it, and let me tell you, I loved this book. First of all, a big difference from the first book in the series was the exploration of the world and the world politics. It was a lot more expanded on this time around. We got to see a lot more of other regions outside of Kekon. And mainly this was because there were now characters who were living in and often traveling to places outside of the country. And so we got to see a lot more of the culture and the richness and the clashes of culture with characters who don't really know how to act outside of their home country. Being able to see these characters now living in a place so totally foreign to them was really interesting. And the dynamic was really cool because the outside world is a lot more like our real world today, at least here in the US. They have more of a modern vibe to them, whereas Kekon is really rooted in traditions and sticking to their old ways. Whereas you can really see the stark difference where you go outside of the country of Kekon and the world is advancing a lot more, at least cultural-wise, than Kekon is. Because of this, when we have characters who are traditionally Kekonese and they travel outside of the country, they clash a lot with the people of those lands. Some customs that may seem totally normal to them within Kekon are not really accepted and are frowned upon in these outside countries. And so you really get to see that struggle to assimilate to their new culture and find a way to balance their traditional Kekonese beliefs with this new way of thinking and this new way of living. Specifically, the outside world really frowns upon the violent nature of Kekon. And so, whereas in Kekon you can challenge anybody to a clean blade, duels are really commonly accepted and are just a part of life. Outside of Kekon, much like it would be here in the US or I'm sure anywhere else in the world, if you start a brawl on the street, you're gonna be penalized for it. And it's not just seen as a way to resolve a dispute between two people. And then having seen these other outside countries, we are also exposed a lot more to the politics. And we really get to see how the inter-country relations that don't include Kekon are still affecting Kekon indirectly. And that just brings a sort of realism to the world that adds another layer to the complexity that the first book created. And now with all these different countries and all the world politics, you really get to see our core main characters really struggling to balance the needs and wants of their own people with inter-country relations and what they have to do to remain respected as a country among the world. All of this to say that the world building that Fonda Lee did in the first book that I absolutely loved, she just honestly topped that and did so much better this time around, which I didn't even think was possible, and expanded upon the world in a way that I couldn't have foreseen, and it was just amazing. Now, the characters were again a big highlight of this story, just like in the last novel. First of all, Andon is placed in a lot of these tough situations, really new foreign situations to him, and I loved seeing how he had to navigate and fend for himself for the first time in his life, and seeing his character mature as he went through life with this whole new perspective, with a lot of challenges to his prior beliefs or the way that he lived his life. Andon really was one of my favorite characters to follow in the story, and whenever I got to a chapter that was from his perspective, I was just so excited to keep reading. Now, Hilo and Shay, they are a bit conflicting for me. Fonda Lee did a great job of making us sympathize and fall in love with these characters in the first novel. And then throughout this novel, they just make so many questionable decisions, sometimes are a little bit cruel, and they do some things that you just sit back and you're like, why? Like, why are you doing this? And they just do some things that, you know, if it was done in real life, you wouldn't be able to accept. But since you love them so much, since they're so dear to you from the last book, you kind of push aside some of the bad things that they do, some of the more gray things that they do, some questionable actions, because you're willing to look past that because you're so in love with the characters. But as the story goes on and on, there's just so much that piles up that eventually you just need to look at everything that happened and admit that damn, these aren't the same people from the last story. They really changed so much because of everything that's going on, because of all the hardships, because of all the tragedies that went on in their lives. You really see how they've changed and hardened and became more cold. And you obviously still do get a lot of glimpses of their heartwarming nature, of their kind actions, of their sympathies. And Fonda Lee does a great job of keeping you guessing, because in one scene they'll be super loving with their siblings, with the people of their clan, and then in the next scene they turn around and kill somebody in cold blood or do something that is just unspeakable. And you're really left feeling conflicted about how to feel about these characters. Now, I really did love the scenes with Shay in it. I love the scenes with all the characters, but Shay specifically, she has really grown into her position as Weatherman. She has really come into her own as a person within the clan. She's gained the respect of all her peers despite being a woman in this old-fashioned thinking world. And so reading the scenes where she stands up for herself, where she shows to everybody else that she can handle herself, were just really amazing to me. I loved seeing that. Another thing that I really loved about this book was how we follow Mutt and Barrow. At first, fresh off of the last book, I wasn't really sure how to feel about these characters. I wasn't sure the direction that they were headed or the purpose that they served. But this book really had a great focus on them at times that really showed you the other side of Kekon. Because a lot of times you get sucked into the perspective of the higher ups in the clan, the leaders of the clan, and really lose sight of the common people. And so having the perspective of these citizens was really nice to see and really refreshing. And you really get an insight into how these people think, what makes them tick, why the criminals do what they do, what their motivations are. And you really don't get that in a lot of other books. A lot of fantasy stories only focus on the big people. They focus on the clan leaders and the royal family and things like that. And you don't get to see the other side. You don't get to see how the citizens are affected in their everyday lives by the decisions that these really important people make. Now, the villain of this story, and from the last story as well, Ait Mara, she is a lot more behind the scenes in this book, but she's still terrifying. Her presence is still felt all throughout the novel, and she's absolutely frustrating because she always seems to be 3 steps ahead of everybody else. Anything that Hilo and Shay try to do to combat the Mountain Clan, Ait Mara is just several steps ahead of them. She knows what's coming, she knows what to expect, and even when it seems that the Nopi clan gained an advantage over her, she turns around and flips the situation and finds a way to turn it back on them. She's just an absolutely frustrating villain. She's terrifying in her scenes. You can really feel her presence. You can feel how scared of her everybody else is. And I love that from a villain. I love to hate her, and she's absolutely great. Now, the ending was absolutely amazing again. Fonda Lee is 2 for 2 now. She absolutely nailed it. And again, she just subverted every single one of my expectations. She made me feel real fear for all of these characters. She put them in situations that you really don't know if they'll get out of it. She's not afraid to put even her dearest of characters in life-threatening situations. In a lot of these fantasy stories, when the main characters are in tough situations, you really don't get the sense that they're in real trouble sometimes. You feel like you know they'll get out of it because they're the main characters, and you don't feel any real fear because you haven't been given any reason to think that. But Fonda Lee has shown again and again that she's not afraid to subvert every one of your expectations. And the ending was done so well that it wrapped up the story perfectly, and I'm so excited for Jade Legend to come out. I think it comes out in the fall, and I'll definitely be bringing you guys a review of that whenever it does come out. So my overall thoughts on Jade War: absolutely loved it. The world building was amazing. The character work was just phenomenal. And the story has you at the edge of your seat at every turn. I definitely recommend you pick this up. Please go read Jade City first if you haven't read that yet. If you have, I think you're gonna love Jade War, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it. Let me know if you liked this book. Let me know if you hated it. If you haven't read it yet, let me know if you're excited about it. Leave your comments down below, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I post every Friday, and I can't wait to bring you guys more content. Thanks for watching, guys.